Hello Internet and welcome to the Collective Arcana. We are a channel all about tabletop gaming. I'm Wyatt and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Guns and Gears, a new rulebook for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Hey, have you subscribed yet? If not, go down there and do that. We really appreciate it. So, Guns and Gears is the latest rulebook from Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and it is all about technology, especially gears and black powder associated with firearms. This makes it pretty different from, say, Secrets of Magic, which, had a lot of more out there ideas, but still within that realm of fantasy that most of us are expecting when we sit down to a fantasy tabletop RPG. Whereas this book is adding a whole lot of things that are not typical for a fantasy setting. Black powder guns, and steampunk machinery, gears, as per the title, but also things like Tesla coils and, steam engines and things like that. So it's very much this sort of idea of, is it going to be a whole new setting type of a thing for you, or is it going to be how are you going to incorporate this into your setting, versus something like Secrets of Magic, which again is just adding more detail and more options within the caveats that you've already made for your world. Well, there are, you can summon monsters, the summoner just does it a little differently, and, you can use magic or swords, and the Magus just combines them especially well. Having guns is a big decision for your fantasy world, and Galarian has them. Yours may or may not, and if you haven't made that decision yet, there are some great resources in this book to help you do so and decide where and if and when to include these types of technology. With that out of the way, let's talk about what's actually in here. We have two classes. We did a playtest for them previously, the Gunslinger and the Inventor. The Gunslinger is returning from Pathfinder 1st Edition, and it's what you imagine it would be. A character who is very good with guns, and, that might seem a strange thing to make a class about. It sort of kind of is, but they manage it. They make it be not just about the fact that they're holding a gun, but tying into some of those tropes and those cliches that you might imagine when you picture a gunslinger in modern fiction. One thing that's worth noting, if you don't have guns in your world, that's okay. The gunslinger, most everything that they do works just as well with a crossbow. So if you like some of the ideas and concepts and character options, but your world doesn't allow for guns, or you're playing in a world where the GM has said no guns, you could say, hey, what about this, but with a crossbow? And can I do that? And odds are, theoretically, they should say yes, because you're not using the strange part, the black powder weapon. You are just using the rules, which are, again, pretty interesting. It's a sort of bizarre support class. We're not going to go super into detail on the Gunslinger, because we're going to do a class video, but if you sort of want to see some of our thought processes during the playtest, we have a couple of videos about that. Might be a link here or there. But, again, wait for our class videos, which are coming. We just sort of had a lot hit all at once with Magus, Summoner, and Gunslinger and Inventor. So those are all still coming. Just haven't had a chance to get to them yet. But the Gunslinger is definitely slightly improved. The big changes here that I'm going to mention before we move on to what else is in here is they fixed the reload issue with each of the different ways getting their own unique reload from level 1. They also added a sort of kind of two new ways, but one new way based in, which is the Vanguard, which is a shotgun or other sort of spread damage weapon that's intended to break up melee and cause a ruckus there. So definitely unique from the mid to far range of the other ways. We also have the Inventor, and the Inventor is, again, relatively unchanged with just a few additions and a little bit of a slight tweak to the way unstable actions work. It's not exactly what I was hoping if you watched our playtest coverage, but it's a fine fix. It's going to open up a lot more options. Basically what they did was, if you take a feat that has the unstable trait, most of them will also have a stable version of that unstable action. So you may not necessarily, find yourself in a situation where you've used an unstable feature and are out of class options. You just will be out of the more spectacular versions of your class options. Is that good? No, I don't like it. But, we'll get to that in the video on Inventor. But it is enough. It's enough to make the class work, because the class really did almost work as it was. So even this small change, as well as a little bit of difference in how and when you roll the check to see if you can use it again, which you usually can't, but now you don't have to commit to using an action before you find out if you can or not, which is a small but also big change. If that all seems like madness, it is. We'll cover it in the class video. Suffice to say, both the Gunslinger and Inventor pretty much fixed the biggest complaints from the playtest, added a whole lot new options, and considering these classes, for the most part, didn't have a whole lot of holes in them, aside from these two issues, that means that they're coming out looking very good. You know, actual play with the final versions is the only thing that's going to tell us for sure what's going on. And with another playtest for Dark Archives happening right now, which, you know, linked somewhere around to what that is if you want to check that out. I'm not going to have time to revisit the Gunslinger or the Inventor for a while. But I'm sure they got it right. They typically do, and they definitely addressed the primary concerns that everyone had, which was the reload for the Gunslinger and the restrictiveness of the unstable action for the Inventor. Now, something that's really interesting that they did here was they separated pretty much all the rules for guns into a section and all the rules for gears into a section. They actually flipped it inside. I'm talking guns first just because it's called Guns and Gears, but they did it alphabetically, so gears first, just to confuse us, I think. But what that means is that if you are running a setting that has guns, you know, maybe you have pirates with, you know, their pistols and cannons, and you want that black powder, you want that kind of stuff, but you don't want the tech side, the steampunk, Tesla coils, and clockworks, then you can say, okay, you know, use anything within guns in this book, in the guns section. It's almost like broken into different sub-books within the book. So anything for guns is fine. Or the vice versa, if you want to have, you know, a steampunk world, but you don't feel comfortable with guns for whatever reason, you can say no guns, but anything that's in the rest of the tech, the rest of the book is fine. And I think that's a really handy way to do that, because these are, again, both really big concepts that not every table, not every game, not every setting is going to want to include. I mentioned before, and I'm going to this will be the deep dive, they have this thing called the rotating gear. It's the last chapter of the book, and it's all about where these technologies, guns and gears, fit into Galarian, and as well as, you know, famous NPCs and people who are involved in those sort of technologies. And it tells you places where you can find it in the core setting, as well as giving you inspiration and ideas for how you can incorporate it into your setting. So it's a really nice feature, and something that I should say that I should have expected it after Secrets of Magic, and seeing the way that they're handling these rule books, giving both lore as well as, you know, hard rules. It's something that I really like about the way that they're doing these, no longer the non-core rule books, as they're calling them. It allows you to, you know, really just sort of say we're using core, APG, you know, all those books, plus this book or plus that book, or, you know, of course you might say plus all books, but just the idea to say, you know, this is the core, these are the core rules, the core rule book, GMG, and the APG, and of course the monster manuals and stuff. But those are, you know, that's it. And then depending on the setting that you're playing, you can just take one of these additional rule books and just apply templates to everything. And I really like that. I think it's a great design choice in terms of keeping games and books feeling modular. It also means that all of these books, even if you're not even playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, there's still going to be a lot of really cool stuff in there for you that you can, you know, take and employ, even if you're not going to need the whole book. You know, the rotating gear isn't a huge chunk of it, but it's still really nice to peruse through. If you're not playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but your friend is, borrow the book, read through it if you're thinking about including guns or this sort of technology. And it's a great read, honestly. But yeah, so if you're not sure where to put it, they have a little bit of a guide for you. And that's, as a home brewer, I love that. That's great. In addition to the Inventor, in the Gears side, we have Automatons. They are souls, sentient creatures that are housed within artificial shells. Very much a Ghost in the Machine sort of thing. They are, if you love Eberron like I do, they are your Warforged equivalent. What's interesting is that they are not treated very much like robots. That's clearly a balancing design choice. They have some explanations for why they don't have the normal construct immunities. be honest, sort of a bummer, but I also totally understand how nearly impossible that would have been with how balanced and well-rounded Pathfinder 2nd Edition is, to be able to include any ancestry that has all the stuff. I mean, if you haven't played, I don't know really 5e how they handled Warforged. I haven't actually checked out the new Eberron books, but I know in 3.5, Warforged had to have a lot of downsides because they had so many upsides, and they were still worth it, even though you were coming out overall on the whole negative for your ability score modifiers and could not be healed or drink potions normally like most people could. So you were really hurting yourself, but you were getting this, these Warforged or these construct immunities, and it really did balance itself out pretty well. They didn't want to do that. I understand. I am bummed, but the good news is you do still definitely get that robot feel from the Automaton. In some ways, a lot more than Warforged do, just the way that, because the flip side of the way that Pathfinder 2nd Edition does Ancestries is that, yes, you're going to get less up front. That means it's harder to build in something with those immunities, but you're going to get a lot more options as you continue to grow because you continue to go back and get feats that you can only use on your ancestry. In the case of automatons, that means you are giving yourself the ability to fly or become large or get built-in integrated weapons or special senses and things like that. And they even have feats that are just to enhance feats they already have, which is a thing we haven't really seen, but it allows them to say they can enhance some of the feats they already have, and they can with downtime change which of those feats that they're going to enhance. So it gives them a lot more versatility than most ancestries get, which I guess makes sense when you can add and remove parts from your chassis with downtime. But it's really cool and it's really neat. It comes with a few different heritages that are mostly based around the role they would have had or been designed to have. Warrior, mage, one called Sharpshooter, and then most interestingly, I think, one called a Hunter. And what that heritage does is it allows you to sort of change and go down on all fours and become a quadrupedal creature, robot, and get a bonus to your movement speed. So what that means is fans of the 90s CGI cartoon show Beast Wars, you can now be Cheetor, or I guess really anybody, but specifically they refer to a predatory four-legged creature, so Cheetor. And that's cool. And in point of fact, one of the things that they can do at 17th level, one of their last ones, is they can just transform themselves into a stationary cannon. So fans of the original 80s Transformers cartoon shows, rejoice, you can now be Megatron. In addition to the classes in the Ancestry, we get a lot of backgrounds. We get 26 new common backgrounds. I think 6 uncommon backgrounds, and then 5 or 6 more rare backgrounds. Rare backgrounds tend to give you different things outside of the normal package. Uncommon, a little bit less so, but still. But the gist is that they're all relatively balanced around each other for the most part. They just might cause some hinkiness. But that means that there's a whole lot of new options for your character, to describe where they are, where they came from, all that are interacting with these new tech rules. So we got at least, so we got the ABCs there, the ancestry, background, and class. We also got a lot of archetypes, which, if you're not playing with free archetypes, what are you doing? Can't recommend it enough. But even if you're not, anybody can theoretically pick up an archetype. And so they're very handy if you're not familiar. You probably shouldn't be watching this video. You should go watch some of our old videos. But they're nice things you can tack onto your character without losing most of your class progression or any of your class progression, and if you're doing free archetype. And they, again, are allowing you to add some of these tech feel abilities to your existing characters without having to take one of the new classes. Some of those are, of course, the multi-class archetypes for Inventor and Gunslinger. Of course, you got to have those. But there are also a number of others. There's a Overwatch, which is very much like a Cavalier in the sense that it's this sort of battlefield control, directing your allies. But it's much more based around perception rather than charisma. And you get a lot of reactions that you can use to help allies, even giving them sort of extra actions. It's super cool, super fun, and it's the sort of thing that we've seen people ask for over and over again, these sort of support marshals. And so it's nice to see, in addition to getting the Gunslinger and Inventor, which can both sort of have that feel, but to also get some archetypes, and there are more archetypes that fill that role. So again, something people really wanted, and it's something we're starting to see more and more of. We also have a Sterling Dynamo, which is someone who has integrated a prosthesis into their body, and they basically can overcharge it and get special abilities from this prosthesis outside of what, you know, the normal prosthesises are, which there are in this book. Or no, that'll be Grand Bazaar. There are some in this book, but Grand Bazaar has the majority of them. But it allows you to sort of manipulate and enhance because you've got this special version of this prosthetic body part. I think it's typically an arm or a leg or both. But it really allows you to, you know, treat your body as a weapon and get some nice hidden options, including the ability eventually to fly. So great. The Trapsmith archetype is a juiced up sort of a snare crafter, and it's going to require that you have either the snare crafter archetype or the one of the snare crafting ranger feats. And what's cool is if you do have the snare crafting archetype, you can still take this new archetype without finishing all of the dedication feat, or all of the archetype feats from that dedication, which we see once in a while, and we have a couple more examples in this book. But it's something where you can, I'm not sure if this means that Paizo is saying, hey, this feels sort of unfinished, or if it's just saying, you know, here's some more options that may not be right for this original. Hard to say exactly what they're going for, but it is really neat and fun to see, like, you know, oh, I'm a snare crafter. I made a bad choice because this new one came out. Oh, no, it turns out I can still have this stuff too. We also have a trick driver and a vehicle mechanic, and these are both tied to all the vehicles that we're getting in this book. And they allow you to, as the trick driver, you know, pull off some pretty fancy maneuvers in your vehicle, and as the mechanic, help, you know, things run smoothly, improve, and repair, and, you know, just overall get the most out of a vehicle. These are both archetypes that may not work in every setting, you know, often sort of the case with archetypes, but these even more so. Not only do you have to be allowing these guns and gears options, but you also have to be saying, well, yeah, you guys are going to have a cool vehicle from early enough on that a couple of you may want to take these feats to get the most out of it. Niche, yes. Cool, also yes. Those are all sort of the gears themed ones. For the guns themed ones, we have the artillerist, who is all about a siege engine and getting the most out of that siege engine, working with a smaller crew than normal, and, you know, getting surprising benefits that are not normal for your siege engine by picking a favorite one that you sort of have a bond with, which is weird because it's an animate object, but, you know, some people have, you know, like, oh, that's my car. That's like Supernatural, you know, Dean and Baby, the Impala. So you know, so that's pretty fun. I like that. Again, it's going to be one of those things that if your player is going to pick one, you either need to decide to talk them out of it or give them the ability to be near an artillery of some sort, fairly often some sort of siege engine, so they can take advantage of it. We also have a beast gunner. These specialize in new types of weapons called beast guns. And includes the rituals on how to make them, but they're essentially like, you know, magical beasts, monsters that are harvested and incorporated into a firearm so that they get some sort of magical ability. The beast gunner itself actually also gains some spellcasting abilities and a very Eldritch Archer, pretty much exactly the Eldritch Archer's ability to deal or to deliver a spell effect through a weapon attack. Very similar to the Magus, but requiring an additional action. But you're, you know, fast forwarding to that feature, whereas the Magus, you know, can only get it once per minute, and can't do it at range if you're multiclassing into Magus, I don't believe. So overall, it's very good. It's just a cool option. Everybody who's going to be playing with guns in a D&D setting wants magical guns. Don't worry, there are others besides these very flavorful beast guns, and we'll get to those. But it is a really nice and a cool sort of thing. If you like Monster Hunter, you're probably going to like this idea. There's also a bullet dancer, which is gun kata. It's a monk with a gun. I don't know a better way to put it. You don't technically have to be a monk, and you don't technically have to use unarmed strikes. You can use like the bayonet from the weapon or the stock of the rifle or anything else, I imagine. But that's very much the flavor of it. There's the Demolitionist, who is using alchemical bombs, I think, only alchemical bombs. A little differently than most people, using them to affect terrain, control battlefield conditions a little bit more than normal, and using them to explode doors and walls and things like that and set traps. We also have the Firework Technician, which is using these sort of setting these sort of hazards that are mostly like distractions and things like that. It's a pretty niche, weird one, but I think sounds pretty fun, honestly. You just imagine like Lord of the Rings when that dragon firework gets set off and all the chaos that that ensues there. There's definitely applications for it. Just exploding, hurting people's ears and different things like that. But did not expect it. We have a pistol phenom. That's somebody who is cherry picking a few of the Gunslinger feats to just be really good and dramatically good with a pistol. If you don't want a lot of the Gunslinger stuff, but you want some of it, this might help you get that flavor and get a little quicker access to some of those feats than the normal delayed way of a multi-class archetype. As well as, some unique features too. Another one that's really cool is there's a Sniping Duo. And that sounds really weird for an archetype. The gist of it is, it's a lot like the old teamwork feats that we used to see in Pathfinder2e, but unlike those, two people don't need to take them. It allows you to just say, oh, that's my spotter there. I'm the sniper, that's my spotter, and just take some downtime, or probably just adventuring with your GM, but I know this person pretty well, we get each other, and we've developed this sort of working relationship where they can help me make my shots. And so you get these sort of tandem abilities, these buddy actions that you can take so that you can help each other. If you miss a shot, they can set it up so that you may not miss the next one. And it's just a lot of stuff like that. And it's really cool because your archetype can actually be giving actions and interactions to your allies, new things that they can do on their turn or, with their reactions or whatever, without them having to invest anything because you invested in it and it's paying off for the both of you. It's a really unique thing we haven't seen yet, and I hope we see more of it. Honestly, it's really cool. A shield duo would be a really cool thing. I don't know. I'm just spitballing, but I do hope we see more of these sort of teamwork archetypes and how they interact from that one-sided space. The last general archetype that we have is Unexpected Sharpshooter, and it's Vash the Stampede. If you're not familiar, it's this concept of a character who seems completely inept, seems like a total goofball, but they also have this reputation for being very dangerous and deadly, and no one's quite sure if they're just pretending to be idiots or if they just have such insane luck that their bumbling just seems to work for them. And the archetype doesn't really clarify. It says it's really up to the player and or the GM to decide which is actually the case, however you want to play it out. But the rules support both of those concepts, either just so lucky you're good, or so good that you can make it appear like you're lucky. And that's a really fun archetype, and something that I really did not anticipate seeing. Vash the Stampede. I should have at this point. They do so many little nods and references, and they do them so well. I should stop being surprised by them, but I'm not yet. Finally, for archetypes, we get a new class archetype. I sort of mentioned it before. It adds it's specifically for Gunslinger, and it adds a new way, a spellcasting, interacting sort of way. It doesn't actually get spells itself, but it gets a lot of very magical feeling abilities, and it qualifies to use the Beast Gunner archetype, even if you haven't taken enough feats to get it. It just means easier access to having two archetypes, so that you can get that spellcasting and that magical shot from the Beast Gunner. It's a weird way to do it, to sort of almost require that double archetype. I don't necessarily think that it's a problem, especially in a free archetype game. It's going to be very easy to qualify for. But out of a free archetype game, it seems a little bit clumsy way to handle it. They might as well have just given the way of the spell shot the option to get spellcasting, basic spellcasting and progressive benefits on its own without having to go to the Beast Gunner, but it's fine. It doesn't really matter. You could always take the Eldritch Archer anyway. It should work. You might need to tweak that. I'm not sure the exact wording on it, but it seems a little clunky, but it does work, and seems like a pretty fun option for your character. So now let's talk equipment, both Guns and Gears and the Grand Bazaar, which I'll be doing a video on as soon as I can. They both feature a lot of new items, as you would expect. Guns and Gears is adding a whole new genre of items and gadgets and things like that. And Grand Bazaar is a book just about shopping, basically. So Guns and Gears is adding 20-some new just base firearms. It's adding, let's see, I got a list here. So 20 plus new base guns, 8 of those beast guns that I mentioned. Some of those have multiple leveled versions of them. Which you'll see with some magic items, there'll be different versions of. There are Cobbled Firearms, which are these sort of ideas of these firearms that shouldn't really work if you played Fallout 4 and like the pipe pistols and making your little makeshift weapons. You'll sort of get that, but these are made by goblins, and so they're extra weird. There's a spoon gun. They're fun. they're pretty neat. But we also have, let's see here. We have a dozen combination weapons, which, that's your gun blades, your rapier pistol. I think there's a Warhammer gun, not like Warhammer 40K, although I'm sure it would be right at home. But it's basically these like melee weapons with integrated firearms. And what's cool is they have special critical specializations where you can either use the normal weapon, if it's like an axe, for example, that critical specialization, or you can use the gun specialization, or you can use the special one that basically is, you've critted with a melee weapon and now you pull the trigger for your gun for a little extra impact. It's very neat, very cool. A lot of people were really wanting it and very excited for it. I am one of them. I don't know how much I'm going to use it, but I sure do like that I have the option. As far as other specific magic items, in addition to the 8 beast guns, we have 3 cursed guns. Watch out for those. We have 4 intelligent guns, 7 general magic guns, and 12 different ammunitions. Some of them are magical, some of them are more alchemical in the feel. Sometimes they'll clearly state that. But that means that you've got a whole lot of options, especially considering, most firearms can also have many of the existing runes and things like that. So you can, still cobble together your custom gun that does exactly what you want. Especially if you're a champion, you can have your gun and just add your free enhancements to it, just as an example. But, so they're still perfectly viable with the rules that already exist. These are just some unique variations. In addition to, I want to say about 24 vehicles, there could be more. We also have a dozen siege weapons, lots of tools and accessories, things that are going to sort of act like they have these gadgets, especially that sort of act like these consumable magic items that just aren't magic, but in many ways have like that verisimilitude. So, for example, there's like chameleon suit that you can put on over your armor. That just for a short while can make you a lot harder to spot. It's not exactly invisibility, but it's a nice alternative. And there are just a lot of things like that. There are some additions you can get to your weapons, primarily guns, so that you can add like a scope to your rifle and things like that, and those have different effects as well. Finally, we have mobility devices. I mentioned, that there is the Dynamo, Crimson Dynamo, I think it is, who gets the metallic prosthetic that is like, sort of like a living prosthetic sort of thing. And we are getting a lot more prosthetic rules in Grand Bazaar. But this specifically has mobility devices. So it's got a wheelchair, like a standard wheelchair. It's also got a combat wheelchair, an adventurer's wheelchair, they call it, that is much more capable of going out and adventuring in. And then they've got a few unique variations of chair, one with like spider legs, one with frog legs for hopping, and one that is a roving EMP almost. So a lot of really cool options there, and a lot of rules for how to treat those items in your game. Rather than treating them as items, it's best to treat them as just an extension of the person who's using them. So, that way, if someone is hasted, the chair is part of them, so they can be hasted with the chair sort of thing. And that's just so that you don't have any in-the-way wonkiness with the rules, trying to, make sure that this player can, have their concept, or this person can have this representation of themselves without it causing a bunch of mucky rules interactions. So they just say, for ease of everything, just treat it like it's part of the person. And, a few other rules for making sure that you're handling that well, which I really appreciate. I think it's a really great thing. Again, with the prosthetics coming in Grand Bazaar, which I do have. I just haven't gotten to it yet. The fact that these landed so close together just meant a lot of reading that I had to work in. But it's really good, especially Guns and Gears. We'll do the Grand Bazaar video, but Guns and Gears is just loaded up with stuff, people. It was very dense. When I was going to do my outline for this video, believe it or not, I do use them. When I was doing my outline for this video, I thought it was going to be pretty quick. I was like, a couple classes, a couple archetypes, but there's just so many new things, and that comes from the fact that this is an entirely new concept that you're attacking on. Not like Secrets of Magic, where it's just more magic, or even the Advanced Player's Guide, which is like, here's some new class concepts. This is all new. This is a whole lot of ground that they had to cover so that you can get this book and feel like all that stuff is part of the world. They do a really good job. They crammed so much in that I couldn't believe it. Almost every page was just whole new big stuff. The number of archetypes that are in there, for example, is just very surprising and very good. And just the way that they're embracing those archetypes just has me very excited for the future of the game. And that's it. That's Guns and Gears. I definitely recommend you get it. You pick it up. It goes on sale. I'm not sure when we'll get this posted. It's the 10th today, I think, or the 11th. But it goes on sale on the 13th. So if it's out now, go check it out. It's really cool. Unless you don't want this at all in your game, and that's totally fine. Again, not every game needs Guns and Gears. But if you do want it, it's there. It's top-notch. Check it out. And thanks so much for watching. We're going to have the Grand Bazaar out as soon as we can. And then we're going to dive right into the class videos and then hopefully be able to get caught up a little bit. So thanks for being patient with us. And thanks for watching. Have a great day. Welcome to the collective. And we'll see you next time.